The elves had always looked down on humans. They were the long-lived, the wise, the wielders of ancient magic. Humans were short-lived, brutish, and, in their eyes, barely more than clever animals. That was before the war. The invaders had come from beyond the stars, with weapons that shattered spell wards and armor that ignored enchanted steel. The elves, once the supreme power of their world, were pushed back, their enchanted forests burned, their crystal citadels reduced to rubble. And so, with no other options, they turned to the one species they had always dismissed, humanity. You wish to learn war? Fine, but you will learn it the human way. Captain Elias Voss stood before the Elven Maidens, the finest warriors of their fallen kingdom, their eyes filled with pride, doubt, and the faintest hint of desperation. They were used to dancing through battles with twin blades, casting spells that bent nature to their will. Now they stood in the shadow of the monstrous machines of war, human war machines. Towering steel titans, the Mech stood like gods of metal, their weapons gleaming under the harsh training lights. Each was a relic of countless battles fought across the void, piloted by generations of human warriors. And now, these delicate, magic-wielding elves would learn to command them. Elias paced before them, arms crossed. Magic is dead in this war. Your gods won't save you. Your swords won't cut through alloy plating. You want to win? You will do it inside a cockpit, gripping the trigger of a railgun, and you will fight like a human. The elven commander, Lyriel Valeth, stepped forward. She was tall, her silver hair tied back, emerald eyes sharp. She radiated elegance and power, but Elias only saw another recruit who needed to be broken in. We are not mere students, human, she said, voice edged with arrogance. We have fought wars long before your kind had fire. Elias smirked. Yeah, and how's that working out for you? Silence. He gestured to the line of training mechs. You have 3 weeks. If you live through it, you fight. If not, you die with the rest of your people. Welcome to human war. 3 weeks later, the training was brutal. Magic was banned inside the simulators. They had to learn everything from scratch, how to operate the controls, manage power systems, and, most importantly, kill without hesitation. Elves were graceful, but grace meant nothing when a railgun slug traveled at Mach 6. Lyriel hated Elias at first. He was harsh, relentless, breaking them down every time they hesitated. But as the days passed, she began to understand. Every rule, every harsh word, every lesson was meant to turn them into something their ancestors never imagined, mech pilots, soldiers of steel. The first time she crushed an enemy drone with a clean railgun shot, Elias only nodded. Not bad, princess. Let's see if you can do it under fire. The first battle, when the aliens returned, they expected broken elves clinging to ancient spells. Instead, they were met with fire. The first mech dropped from orbit like a falling star, its impact shaking the ground, then another, and another. The towering machines of war strode forward, and from within their cockpits, elven hands gripped human weapons. Lyriel led the charge, her voice sharp over the comms. For our people, for our world, and for the first time in history, the elves fought like humans. And they won. The battlefield was a ruin of shattered trees, scorched earth, and craters still steaming from orbital bombardments. Alien war machines, grotesque amalgamations of chitin and metal, lay in smoldering heaps. The elves, once proud warriors of grace and spellcraft, stood in the cockpits of human war machines, their hands still trembling from the adrenaline of battle. They had done it. They had won. But the war was far from over. Aftermath of victory. Lyriel Valeth climbed out of her mech, her breath ragged. She felt the blood pounding in her ears. But it wasn't fear. It was something else. Something raw. Something human. She turned to see Captain Elias Voss approaching, stepping over the wreckage of an alien walker. His fatigues were stained with dirt and sweat, but there was a satisfied smirk on his face. Not bad, princess, he said. Lyriel's hands clenched into fists. Stop calling me that. Elias only chuckled, then stop acting like one. She wanted to retort, to bite back at the human commander who had made their training hell, but as she looked around at the battlefield, at the bodies of their enemies, she understood. Elias had turned them into something new, something stronger. She met his gaze. What's next? Elias grinned. Now, we teach you how to win a war, not just a battle. Advanced training, the human way. The training only intensified. The elves had mastered the basics, but now Elias pushed them further. simulated combat in zero gravity, urban warfare drills, tactics that made no sense to an elven mind, ambushes, deception, sacrificing ground for a greater strategic gain. The elves resisted at first. They were used to honorable duels, to wars fought with dignity. Humans fought with brutality. "We do not run from battle," one recruit had shouted during a drill. Elias had fixed them with a cold stare. "We don't run, we reposition. You think honor matters when the enemy wants you extinct?" Slowly, painfully, they adapted. The first time Lyriel led a feigned retreat that funneled an entire enemy squad into a kill zone. Elias nodded approvingly. "You're getting it." She hated to admit it, but she was. She was becoming something else. The counterattack. The alien invaders had been unprepared for their initial defeat. Now, they retaliated with full force. Orbital bombardments rained fire upon the continent. The few remaining elven strongholds burned. And yet, as the world crumbled, the newly trained elven mech pilots stood ready. Elias gathered them in the war room, the holographic map flickering before them. The humans had fought wars across countless stars, but this was different. This was an HFY moment, the reason humanity survived where others fell. "They think you're still the same elves they crushed before," Elias told them. "They think you're weak, soft. Let's prove them wrong." Lyriel and her squad climbed into their mechs. The once pristine machines were now customized, sleek, elegant designs adorned with elven insignias. But beneath the aesthetic beauty was cold, brutal efficiency, railguns, plasma lances, missile pods. This time, they were the ones launching the assault. The first dropship landed behind enemy lines. The elves moved with precision, striking key command nodes before the aliens could react. No grand magical duels, no elaborate spellcraft, just raw, unrelenting firepower. The enemy broke. Lyriel's voice carried over the comms. "Push forward, show them what we've become." The war was no longer about survival. Now, it was about revenge. The war had changed. No longer were the elves a broken people, clinging to the remnants of their shattered magic. No longer did they fight with swords and spells, bound by tradition and honor. Now, they fought like humans. And the enemy was beginning to understand what that meant. The invasion of Kethaar Prime, the alien warlords, the Kethaar, had ruled this sector for centuries, wiping out countless civilizations. Their capital world, Kethaar Prime, was an impregnable fortress, its defenses forged in the blood of conquered races. And yet, the humans had a saying, "No fortress is truly impregnable." Lyriel Valeth, once a proud elven blade dancer, now stood at the helm of a fully armed Mjolnir-class war mech. Gone were the delicate robes of her people, she now wore the reinforced pilot suit of humanity's finest warriors. Beside her, Elias Voss grinned from the cockpit of his own battle-scarred Titan. "This is it, Princess," he said over the comms. "The moment we show them what happens when you push humanity too far." Lyriel smirked. "Not just humanity," she corrected, gripping the controls. "Us." The dropships roared through the void, descending upon Kethaar Prime like the wrath of vengeful gods. The elves, once the hunted, were now the hunters. The battle began with orbital strikes. Human warships shattered enemy defenses, while elven pilots, now masters of mech warfare, spearheaded the ground assault. The Kethaar had expected sorcery and enchanted blades. They got railguns and artillery fire instead. The breaking of the Kethaar, the enemy's heavy walkers, monstrous, insectoid machines powered by biomass and dark energy, emerged from the burning ruins of their cities. In past battles, such monstrosities had crushed entire armies. Not this time. Lyriel led her squad forward, dodging plasma fire as she lined up a shot. She fired. The railgun slug punched through chitin and steel, sending the towering war beast crashing to the ground. Elias's voice rang through the comms. "Push through. No mercy. No mercy." That was something new to the elves. Once, they might have offered surrender. Now, they fought like humans. The battle turned into a massacre. The Kethaar, so used to overwhelming their enemies, were now the ones overwhelmed. Their commanders fell, their war machines burned, their empire crumbled. In the final hours of the battle, Lyriel stood atop the wreckage of a Kethaar warship, her mech's railgun still glowing hot from the final kill shot. "It's over," she said. Elias landed beside her, his mech servos hissing as he stepped forward. He looked at her, then at the ruined city below. "No, he said. This is just the beginning. Lyriel nodded. The elves had been reborn, not as the warriors of old, not as relics of a fading empire, but as something new, as something human. And the galaxy would never be the same. The birth of the Elven Iron Legion. The war against the Kethar was over. Their empire lay in ruins, their fleets scattered. What remained of their once mighty species was now either fleeing into the void or kneeling before their new conquerors. But the war had done more than just break the Kethar. It had transformed the elves. Lyriel Valith stood on the bridge of the Stormcaller, a human battlecruiser now under elven command. She gazed out at the stars, knowing that for the first time in thousands of years, her people were no longer just survivors. They were warriors. And the galaxy was watching. The offer. Elias Voss stepped beside her, arms crossed. He had seen plenty of wars, but even he had to admit, what the elves had become was something different, something more. So, he said, what now, princess? Lyriel smirked at him. We're not done, Captain. Voss raised an eyebrow. The Kethar are dead. You got your revenge. What more is there? Lyriel turned, her emerald eyes burning with something new, ambition. The galaxy is full of those who think we are weak. There are slavers, warlords, empires who would do to others what was done to us. She gestured to the fleet outside, not just human warships, but elven carriers, newly built and armed with human weaponry. The Iron Legion is ready, she said, and we will make sure no one forgets the name of the elves again. Elias chuckled, shaking his head. You've gone full human, haven't you? Lyriel's smirk widened. Perhaps, but tell me, Captain, does that bother you? Elias looked at the fleet. He thought of all the things he had taught her, of the harsh lessons of human warfare. He grinned. Not one damn bit. The galaxy reacts. The fall of the Kethar sent shockwaves across the known universe. To some, the reborn elven warriors were heroes, liberators who had shattered a tyrant's grip on countless worlds. To others, they were a terrifying force, elves wielding the ruthlessness of humanity in the cold efficiency of war. The great empires took notice. Ambassadors arrived, offering alliances. Spies infiltrated, trying to uncover the extent of this new power. And warlords, foolish as they were, whispered of testing this Iron Legion. Lyriel only smiled. Let them come. The next war, it didn't take long. A pirate fleet, emboldened by the chaos of the Kethar's fall, launched an attack on a human-elf colony in the outer systems. They thought it would be easy prey. They were wrong. The first wave of elven mechs dropped into the atmosphere, landing like steel titans among the stunned raiders. No spells, no mercy. The Iron Legion struck with the full force of human warfare, piloted by elven precision. Hours later, the pirate fleet was nothing but debris. The message was clear. The elves had returned. And this time, they would not fall.